Hey guys, welcome back to another week of the Fourth Box podcast. I just wanted to jump on here quickly and kind of intro the episode to let you know two things. One, after recording, I decided to split this into a two-part episode, so that was not the original plan. So make sure that you come back next week to hear this episode in full. We are joined by a guest who will be introduced shortly. His name is Jacob Johnson, incredible speaker. We did run into some audio trouble. So the quality of his audio is not perfect, just some technical difficulties we couldn't quite figure out on our end. Bear with us. The conversation is so good, so important, so impactful. It's just absolutely full of important information. I know the quality is not amazing. I'm sorry. Please tough it out. I promise it's worth it. All right. See you soon.
Hey, fellow Patriots, I'm Bree.
And I'm Blaze. Some call me Pa. It has been said that we have 4 boxes to keep ourselves free. These are the soapbox, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box.
And we are the Fourth Box. We are here to arm you with enough information, resources, and skills to take back your freedom, increase your self-sufficiency, and inspire you to join in the fight against tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Thank you for joining us and for joining in this fight.
Welcome back to the Fourth Box.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another week at the Fourth Box podcast. Very happy to be joining you once again. We have a guest with us tonight who I'm going to go ahead and introduce in just a moment. But before I do that, I'll pass it over to you, Pops.
Okay, greetings, Fourth Box listeners. Great to have you along once again tonight for the ride. It's we have slipped into June. We're very happy about that. Starting to see some decent weather around here. As always, I am raising my glass from the virtual Buckman Tavern, and I have a nice switchback ale from one of our favorite places up the home of the Green Mountain Boys. In honor of all those great things that were taking place up in that area 250 years ago. And I am toasting tonight, I'm toasting Tina Peters, who was released finally today. You might recall she was the Colorado elections clerk who had been trying to advance some discovery on some vote flipping and a lot of other voter integrity issues that had gone on, and she had been incarcerated since 2024, had the prison sentence commuted and was released today. So a big toast to her. Glad to see that. A 70-year-old woman charged with felonies, which really seems a bit extreme, but that's our toast for tonight. So great to see Tina out.
Yeah, cheers. I did not know that happened today. That's a huge bit of news. So cheers to Tina. That was a difficult fight for her and her family for quite a long time.
Yeah, sure was. And then for the quote tonight, freedom has cost too much blood and agony to be relinquished at the cheap price of rhetoric. And that's Thomas Sowell. And again, we're trying to find some more contemporary voices to use for our quotes. And that one comes from the great Thomas Sowell. So I thought that was good as well. Again, freedom is not cheap. It's not free. It takes a hell of a lot of effort, and most oftentimes it takes blood, and we're hoping to avoid that. Lastly, for our moment in history, 250 years ago, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but June 11th, the Continental Congress appointed a committee of 5 to draft the Declaration of Independence. So that's how close we were to Independence Day. We're within a month here, just a month and a couple of days. And you might recall, if you really go back and study the history, it was June 2nd where it was really kind of finished being compiled. But those 5 people were Thomas Jefferson, of course, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. So those were the 5 that were convened to construct a language that then became, over the next couple of weeks, what we know as the Declaration of Independence. So as we march toward July 4th this year, we're going to be sharing moments from history, and that is our moment from history 250 years ago on June the 11th. So that's what I had tonight to kick us off.
That's perfect. We're getting pretty close now as we go through these moments in history. We're getting quite close to the big day. So I love it. Great share. This is a really important moment to look back on. So thanks for all of that. With that, we're going to go ahead and just bring our guest right in. Tonight, we are joined by Jacob Johnson. He's the voice behind the Beware the Mockingbird Substack, the host of the Rise to Liberty podcast, and actually a former Libertarian candidate for the Utah House of Representatives. So welcome to the Fourth Box, Jacob. We're so happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. So, it seems like there's going to be a great discussion, and I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, likewise. I know that you have a lot that you are pretty much an expert on at this point. You've been at this for a long time. So why don't you just give us a little bit of backstory on that to get started? How did you become so involved with the work that you're doing today?
So, it kind of goes back to me just leaving high school, is when I first picked up a Ron Paul book. Or when the very first time I heard of Ron Paul, which oddly enough, the very first time I ever heard of Ron Paul, it was in a High Times magazine. I used to be a partaker, and no longer a partaker. It's nothing against anyone who does. It's just not my thing anymore. But that's where I found them, which I think is kind of funny these days. But at the time, it was a political ad that I saw, and I saw that he was for full legalization of marijuana. And to me at the time, I wasn't very political in high school or anything, but excuse me. But seeing full legalization and decriminalization, I thought that was just like political suicide. It was, wow. It blew my mind. I just could not imagine such a thing. And so I kind of stuck with that. And then I picked up his book. I believe it was On Liberty. And I didn't read it for several years. And in fact, I actually went, I guess, further down the rabbit hole and picked up G. Edward Griffin's Creature from Jekyll Island. And that book literally changed my life. Finding out the Federal Reserve is basically a joke, and that they all financially enslave us, for lack of a better way of describing that. So that kind of started my path, I guess, upward, because it's been an uphill struggle ever since. But so that's kind of where it started. And then, I was definitely a libertarian, leaning more towards the ANCAP side of things. I'm definitely a hardcore ANCAP now. But I never was really interested in the political side of things. And then eventually it just seemed as though like I had to get involved. And so I got involved locally. I never had any interest nationally. That was never my thing. Even still is not my thing. I'm pretty sure it's a lost cause, nationally. But think globally, act locally. One of the few phrases that I think is actually true. And so yeah, let's see, it's about 7 years ago that I got heavily involved in local politics. Here in my state of Utah. So that's kind of where that started. And man, I dove into both feet. I was a recruiter for the Mises Caucus for the Libertarian Party. I revived and chaired my county commission for quite a while, or the county party, excuse me. And I was also communications director for the state party. So it was pretty much my entire life. It's all I was doing was just local politics for many years. And then the last libertarian candidate that we put up for the presidential run, it was not somebody I could back. It was not somebody I supported. And that was the sentiment kind of across the board. And so I kind of stepped away from local politics because of that. And, but in the meantime, I had started this podcast, Rise to Liberty. And I've been going strong ever since. And really that was a answer because I saw what was happening during COVID with the attacks on free speech. And I just knew something had to be done. I wasn't quite sure what. And the podcast field, I mean, even now is like oversaturated. But in my mind, I thought it was like, death by 1,000 cuts. It's like get out as much information, much truth as possible to as many people as possible, regardless of what the market looks like. The podcast market of ideas and how many shows there are and everything. I don't think it really matters. Just get it out there because people can't get enough. So that's kind of where I started. And then now I've completely shifted the focus of my show. It's definitely not quite so much politics related. Well, it's more focused on deep politics, meaning clandestine operations, FBI and CIA shenanigans, a lot of focus on mind control, the Mockingbird media, teaching people about propaganda, how it works, what it looks like, how to counter it. These sorts of things are what I focus on now, and having conversations like this. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a journey that you went on, kind of starting from somebody who wasn't involved at all. I think this brings up two immediate questions for me, which is one, and I don't want to sidebar too into this, but I think it's important for people. Did you find that it was difficult as someone who was not involved in politics at all to then become so involved at the local level? And then two, a little bit of a different question. With the change that your podcast experienced, were these topics that you're involved in now, that you're thinking a lot about now, was that something always in your mind in your early days stepping into the political world? Or is that something that you started to become exposed to, the levels of corruption and just kind of the layers of the underworld in that sense, that then you felt obligated to start sharing more on that and less about the things that you were talking about previously?
So it was not difficult to get involved. And it was just something I truly believed in. And so getting so involved, it really was not difficult for me. I think it was more difficult for my family because now I also recruited them to do the things I was doing, brought my wife along and all of these things. And so I think it was more difficult for them, especially, when I decided to run for chair and I decided to literally run a county party, and then I decided to run for office twice and all of these other things. So I think that was a lot harder for them than it was for me. I don't ever do anything half-assed. Like I just do it right or don't do it at all is how I was raised. And so that's just, I dive in with both feet every time I do something. So, yeah, it wasn't difficult. What was difficult, was actually trying to get people that also want to be involved. It's very interesting. People will complain about a lot of things and everybody has an opinion, but they don't want to do anything about it, I mean, I even got to a point where we were having an event. It was literally just a fun event. I had baseball tickets and invited everyone out to come out on behalf of the Weber County Libertarian Party. Just come out, no political anything. There are free tickets. Just text me beforehand. I'll meet you at the date. Give you your ticket. We had nobody show up.
Oh my gosh!
So yeah, so it was interesting. And then other times we would have a meetup. Like we would have monthly dinner meetups, where we'd just kind of get together, talk about the last month and everything, and we would have 20, 30 people show up, so it was really inconsistent. And I did that for about 2 years. Even went to the National Libertarian Convention and everything in Reno, which was a blast, by the way. But yeah, it's really interesting because to get people to show up, you have to have things going on, but to have things going on, you have to have people show up.
Yeah, of course.
And so trying to get that middleman figured out was really difficult. And it worked out sometimes, and other times it just fell flat on its face, So, but the ultimate conclusion that I ran into is, and this is just why I stepped away from the politics in general, is regardless of who's in charge of the system, it's an unethical system. It's a criminal system built by criminals to protect and bolster criminal behavior.
Amen.
So how do you act ethically in an unethical system? You can't, And so for a libertarian to get into office, you're going to have to do unlibertarian things. And I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose to begin with.
Yeah.
And so I just, I'm now of the belief that, maybe that works for some people, the political side of things. I think that we, the people, actually have way more power outside of office. And not to mention that the battlefield is in our homes. We've got all the chemicals that are in our food, in our water, in our air. Like, we've got all these things that we can take care of at home. And these are some of the first steps that we've got to take before we can start worrying about how the system is ran. Also, like, rebuilding our communities again, knowing our neighbors, being able to have a small garden and share food with each other. There's these sorts of things that need to happen, like, long before we can get any sort of political system back on track. I think politics is downstream from culture anyways. And so once we fix our culture, the politics are naturally going to follow. And so we just kind of need to ignore the politics as much as they don't ignore us. But we just need to kind of honestly just push them aside. We're the ones in control anyways, we're the people. So we just need to take care of ourselves, build our communities the way that they used to be. In some aspects, not every aspect, of course, but, bring it back to a more simpler time, a closer knit time. And then I think everything else will fall into place because they're not, things will change with the powers that be, so to speak, once we're not listening to them anymore and we just reject them. So as far as what I'm focusing on now, these are actually topics that I've always been interested in. And I've actually been researching for years and years, as far as like MK Ultra and mind control and stuff. I also focus quite a bit on cults and serial killers and these sorts of things, true crime. Like I said, deep politics, so clandestine operations, been covering a lot of satanic panic stuff, revisiting that time period. And these are all topics that I would just research for fun. And then I just got to a point with the podcasting where I just wanted to cover topics that interest me. And it just so happens that these are all big topics now, and people are finally catching up. So.
Yeah. Wow. So much stuff there right off the bat that I know just resonates so deeply with us. Dad, I'm sure you've got a question ready, so have at it.
Yeah, Jacob, the first thing I was interested in, we have other friends out in Utah and out in the mountain states. Have you run across Sam Bushman over at the Liberty Roundtable at all?
Sam Bushman. The name sounds familiar. I'm actually kind of terrible with names, so
Yeah.
I would probably say maybe.
Yeah.
It's actually a pretty small circle out here as far as like the Liberty faction. So I'm sure we cross paths at least once.
Yeah, great. Well, Sam is, I think, the CEO of the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officer Association, which was founded by Richard Mack, who's been on the show with us a few times. And Sam and that group out there are very much on the libertarian camp as well. And I just found it curious. And then Alex Newman would be another name to come to mind from out there as part of the significant piece of the New American publication and their website. Great speaker, young guy like yourself who's really on top of a lot of issues. Just wondered if you had ever had any opportunities to bump into either of those two fellas that are very much like-minded, as are we. I think there was so much overlap when you started talking about starting at the family, starting at the community, rebuilding these things. This is how we turn counties around, we turn states around. Oddly enough, we had a quote from Jimmy Morrison last week who really espoused the same thing. We have to take off our mask, be true to ourselves, and stop thinking we need to fit into some predestined category. So that was all, as Bree alluded to, that was all very much on topic with many of the things that we've talked about here on our little podcast. Out of curiosity, were you standing for office at the state level as a state level assemblyman or congressman, or was it the U.S. congressman when you stood for office?
Yeah, so I was running for Utah House.
Okay.
So a state level office.
Yep.
So it was pretty interesting. And yeah, the gentleman, the first gentleman that you had mentioned, like I said, I believe that name sounds familiar. But this Mr. Newman doesn't sound familiar, but that doesn't mean that we haven't crossed paths.
Sure.
I've traveled pretty extensively over the state, especially regarding issues of liberty and freedom and stuff. So. But what's interesting is Utah is kind of kneecapped here because of a institution known as the Libertas Institute, and that's not to throw shade at them by any means. The Libertas Institute is doing great. I guess the founder of the Libertas Institute is Connor Boyack, which is also the author of the Tuttle Twins. So that's a very popular book amongst liberty-minded people. But the Libertas Institute is great. They do honestly amazing things, but because they are doing such amazing things, it's kind of kneecapped the Libertarian Party here. And there's also just, like I said, trying to get people involved because there's a lot of people saying, well, the Republican Party controls everything, so I'll just do the liberty thing through the Republican Party. I think that's a cop-out. I think that's kind of a weak answer, in my opinion. Just because at the end of the day, even if you run the libertarian thing through the Republican Party, it doesn't work out that way. It never works out that way because it's the Republican Party. So you can always have great hopes doing that, but it just never works out that way. You'll always end up having to compromise, and then at that point, what's the point? So yeah, things are very interesting here in the state of Utah, and there's a lot of fire here though. Still, like a lot of fire that burns within people. They don't want to be told what to do here. I think it doesn't take much to see, especially regarding this whole data center. With Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank and the proposed largest data center in the world, which is proposed to be in Box Elder County, which is northern Utah for anyone who doesn't know. I mean, it's brought everyone together. it's interesting. Democrats, independents, Republicans, libertarians, anarchists, everybody is working together on this because it's just so egregious. So it's very interesting. I apologize, but I kind of forgot your second question that you had asked.
Did you have a second question?
Oddly, what's that, Bree?
I said, did you have a second question? I forgot it too.
Well, oddly enough, I think I did. I was so enamored with your discussion. We oddly enough had talked about the O'Leary thing out there in the 40,000 acres or whatever the hell it is that was going to be consumed by a data center. It just seems like things are out of control on that whole topic. But glad to hear things are coming together in Utah, one of the great places around the country where I would hope that there is a big liberty movement.
Yeah, it's it comes in waves here, from what I've noticed. It's interesting. Everyone is definitely freedom minded, and they have the attitude right, and they have it in their soul, but it's like I said, it's just getting people to actually do something about it. We have some very egregious things happening here with the UN, them coming in, and plus we have our own corruption within our own government here. The current governor, Governor Spencer Cox, he in fact I just call him Spencer because I can't think of anything more insulting to a governor than not addressing him as governor. So little Spencer, his whole family is part of a company. It's of course I would blank on the company name, but it's a telecommunications company, and of course they've wired up the entire state, even rural counties and rural cities are wired up for fiber optic. And one of the big plans is to introduce 15-minute cities here. In fact, we're already working on one right now. It's called The Point. That's the World Economic Forum actually wrote an article about and was praising the designs for. But that's a conspiracy theory. It's what I'm told is that's a conspiracy theory. It doesn't exist. And of course, you'll be able to leave 15-minute cities and everything. So, I'm told that I'm just a lunatic when it comes to that sort of thing, even though it's out in the open. It's been addressed. It's even been talked about on, state level media and everything. I'm still the crazy one for that. So I don't know about that one, but, yeah, it's very interesting. You had asked about me running for office. So yeah, I actually ran, for state house. Of course, the Republican one, no surprise there. It was very interesting, though. The first run I had, I actually put a lot more effort into it. The second one, I didn't put quite as much effort into it. I was focused on doing other things, but I was actually quoted in one of the local papers as being a radical. So, because I had espoused to abolish state involvement in schooling, and said, this is absurd. This is not the government's place. They have no business telling teachers what to do. Teachers should tell teachers what to do, not the government. And also, wages.
Parents.
Right, exactly. Parents are in charge of their own kids. This whole myth of it takes a village, that meant, you should raise your kids with your family members, not your neighbor down the street. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I was called a radical that first run, and then the second run, I actually had a lot more parents that were willing to listen to me the second go around, because by that time they had noticed how terrible things were in the public school system. And so I wasn't quite so radical that second time around, which was interesting. But running for office, this is also kind of what led to me kind of stepping away from politics, because I saw how deep the corruption in the vault was. Like there's just no saving it. It's more, in my opinion, it's more of a brace for impact kind of a situation at this point, and how can we save our communities from what they're going to do, and how can we protect ourselves from that? So yeah, I recommend anyone run for office because it's a really interesting experiment. Don't expect much unless you can get the donors behind you. However, the one lesson I did learn, which I try to tell everyone, all the corruption that happens, the most egregious corruption, happens at your city council meetings and your county commission meetings. It happens out in the open, and they do it flagrantly. They don't care. They just talk about it openly, and that's where it all happens. I mean, everyone focuses on Capitol Hills, at the big state houses and everything, and it happens there, obviously. But if you really want to find where the corruption happens, city council meetings and county commission meetings. That's why my county commission meeting actually took place on a Tuesday, first and third Tuesday at like 10:30 in the morning. Who can attend that?
Yeah,
Everyone's at work. So it's very interesting. I mean, I was able to expose a purchase, an alcohol purchase from the county commission for $64,000 in wine, beer, and liquor for a Christmas party that they held, which is absurd. Even in, when I was at the height of my drinking and partying days, I still couldn't imagine such a bill. And even for such a large party that nobody in the community was invited to, $64,000, obviously somebody pocketed some of that money. I have no idea where it went, but, they talk about that openly. So anyone who's curious, just start paying attention to your local meetings, start showing up, because that's where the rot starts, and that's almost where it ends.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's something that we encourage people a lot to do here is show up when you can locally to these events. A lot of times, the one thing we always come back to is no one's there. That's the problem. If just a few people went, we would have improvement already. Like, go with just your group of friends. Go with 2-3 people. It's already more than they're expecting. So, yeah, great point there, Dad. I know you've got a thought to add as well.
Well, I did want to comment to Jacob that I have also dipped into standing for public office, and that was the office of sheriff here in Elk County. In fact, Richard Mack, who I mentioned a few moments ago, was in support of my campaign, and I did attach myself very elementarily with the Republican Party, who offered no support because I espoused such virtues as upholding and living by the Constitution that we all swore an oath that we were going to. And so the Republican Party here in the county did absolutely zero in support of my effort. And I can tell you this honestly, that with Sheriff Mack coming in, we had a fundraising dinner. We gave away a firearm. We had Sheriff Mack speak at the gathering. We raised and spent more money than any other candidate in the county, and we could not swing the vote. We could not swing the 3-2 margin. And I was told I was the same thing, that I was a radical because I was espousing the notion of living up to the Constitution, which, by the way, we've all taken an oath to uphold, defend, and preserve. So I know where you're coming from. It was one and done for me. I kind of suspected going in it was as rotten as it appeared. And I found it to be very much as you describe, even more so at the local level. If you're not playing ball with the team, you're not on, and they will do zero to help you. And unfortunately, I think a large percentage of the voting public is low information voters. And I'm not trying to be at all disrespectful, but I think they get a very small view of what is important to them, and that is how they base their vote. So we could not swing anything despite raising and spending thousands and thousands of dollars. And by the way, the other thing that's interesting in our county in Pennsylvania, anybody that's running for local or county office has to have a committee that keeps track of any money that is exchanged over $250. And I believe we were the only candidate and effort in the county that did it. And we raised and spent more money, apparently, because we disclosed everything than everybody else that ran, and we could not change the dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, this is how they want things. They want people to be low information voters. They want people to have this attitude that, you know, I've got food in my belly, I've got my football up on the TV, and so therefore, nothing matters. And it's like bread and circuses.
Yep.
And yeah, unfortunately, people are low information voters. And whether people take offense to that or not, I'm sorry, but my message when it comes to that is they're forcing you to be that way. Now, if somebody chooses to be a low information voter, I think that's one thing. But I believe that we've been brainwashed as a culture. The mass brainwashing has taken place through schools, largely, through television programming. I mean, it's called programming, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're programmed,
Yeah.
And so we've been mind controlled to a degree that that's acceptable and that's how things should be. And it's interesting because people always ask me, or they point out to me, it's like, well, they couldn't keep that a secret. They can't keep this a secret. Well, okay, first of all, conspiracy is the number one federal crime that is brought against people. So conspiracies are real. They happen all the time. When you look at the definition of it, all it is two or more people plotting something nefarious in secret. So that's pretty much all crime. It's pretty much all crime. So conspiracies happen all the time. And if you want to talk about big operations that are, secrets that are held, look at the Manhattan Project. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who knew, at least to some degree, that something was happening, and a massive secret was kept from almost everyone. So the ability to keep these things a secret is not the problem. It's the problem that people have been told over and over and over again, these things are not happening. And it's like, but they clearly are, because we should actually care more about what is happening to our communities. But we've been brainwashed to believe that it doesn't matter, or that the people that are running for office have our best interests in mind, which is a complete lie. I have a feeling that I have a vested interest in myself, and they have a vested interest in benefiting their career somehow, stealing money, or so. I mean, the trope of a bad politician is just that. It's a trope. Like the fact that it is such an old joke, and it hasn't changed. And for some reason, like, we still put faith in these people. Like, I don't trust these people, And I don't know why anyone does. In fact, I was arguing with a woman when one day I gotten the Weber County Libertarian Party to the Weber County Fair. And we had a booth set up, and, we were talking about dissolving taxes and, stopping taxes because we're not really getting what we were promised, and so why should we keep paying these people? And she said, well, I don't trust my neighbors, and so therefore I think that they should be forced to pay. And it's like, well, I don't trust my neighbors, so I don't think that they should be given the gun.
Yeah.
Like, this is the problem. And I think when we get to a point where we are more comfortable as a society talking about being mind controlled or brainwashed, I think a lot of things will start changing. Because something's got to give, right? Like, we can't keep going like this and still be a free nation. I mean, if there's any semblance of freedom at all left in this country, we've got to come to the realization that we have been controlled to the point where, just compromise after compromise of giving a little bit here, giving a little bit there has led to us being more controlled and having less freedom than at any other point in recorded history. This is the 250th year of this country, and I think as far as our freedoms go, we're looking down the barrel of not having any of them if we
Correct.
keep going the direction that we're going.
Correct.
And for some reason, we've just been, I can't think of another explanation other than, we have been led to believe that our freedoms are selfish. Our freedoms are anything other than, our birthright, that they were bestowed upon us by our creator or God, whatever people want to call it. I'll call it Jesus, but whatever people want to call their higher power, we are given these rights just for existing. We have a right to protect ourselves and our family. We have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and these things are not selfish. We have a right to privacy. These things are not selfish. They are the cornerstone of a functional, high-trust, functioning great society. And unfortunately, once we lose them, getting them back is damn near impossible.
Right.
Or at least the price that we have to pay to get them back, I don't think modern man would be willing to pay that price. So it's a lot easier to fight to keep them than it is to fight and get them back after. And I think really the conversation starts with mind control and brainwashing. So especially in the schools.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you took that here because it is where I was hoping to go next with this conversation. This is something that you've researched extensively, and it's difficult because the word brainwashing does evoke such a negative reaction from people. They just shut down right away, I think, when they hear that term brainwashing. And maybe that is in part because they don't want to admit that to some degree we've all been brainwashed and you have to sort of unwash your brain to get to this point. And it does take effort, which, as you pointed out pretty early on, that's the part that people don't want to do. The effort piece is not something that people are interested in. And, it's necessary with this whole mind control subject because you have to apply effort to be out from under it. I think there's no option. You're not going to accidentally not be one of the people that's brainwashed. Like, it does take a little bit of thought here. So all that said, I know that people think of this as a conspiracy, to your point, but obviously there are projects like the Manhattan Project is one of them that you brought up. There are things that we know about. There are things that have been declassified. It's not something that's fictional anymore because so much truth has come out about it. MK Ultra, we know it to be a decommissioned program. Obviously, that may or may not be true, but to some degree, there's always going to be mind control going on. Even if MK Ultra was decommissioned and they're not doing that specific thing anymore, they learned an awful lot during that time. Am I to assume that knowledge was just chucked out the window and it's not being used amongst us today? So if you could go into that in any capacity, whatever way you see fit, to kind of explain, some examples, why this is very real, why we know this is going on right now, what we should be looking for, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, of course. So first of all, anyone who doesn't know, MK Ultra is a declassified program that was basically illegally perpetrated against the American and Canadian citizens MK Ultra is the third program in a line of behavior modification and mind control programs that took place starting in the 40s and ended, at least officially in the documents, in 1973. So it started with Operation Bluebird, and then it went to Project Artichoke, and then came MK Ultra. MK Ultra is kind of an umbrella term that encompasses 149 sub-projects. And this was exposed by the Rockefeller Commission, which the Rockefellers exposing what they funded. Okay, sure. And then also the church committee hearings in the mid and late 70s. This is where we found out about Project Mockingbird. This is where we found out about the heart attack gun. So all of these things are incredibly documented, which is amazing because most of the documents, documents about exactly what they did, the results of what they did, and how far they went with these experiments, most of them were destroyed. Richard Helms was ordered by Sidney Gottlieb, both CIA men. Richard Helms was the head of the CIA. Sidney Gottlieb was in charge of MK Ultra. Sidney Gottlieb ordered Richard Helms to destroy all of the MK Ultra documents, and the reason he gave in congressional testimony of why is because if these documents ever got out, it would embarrass the agency. Oh, you know. But these are some of the most horrific experiments that, could take place. Basically, what ended up happening is after World War II, we had a operation called Operation Paperclip, and that brought over all the Nazi scientists and researchers. So we're talking rocket scientists, medical doctors, including psychiatrists. We're talking physicists, biologists. It's anybody that is any note in the Third Reich came over. They were basically given fake identities and sent into the interior and given amnesty for their crimes. Now, whether we should have done this or not is kind of up for debate, honestly, because if we didn't get them, the Soviets would have. So now I'm not a huge fan of the Soviets either, but obviously bringing Nazis over to continue the experiments obviously is not a good idea. So, and this is actually why I say that Nuremberg was fake, because while they're charging a handful of these terrible war criminals, at the same time, in secret with taxpayer money, we are allowing for these same experiments to continue here on U.S. soil and on Canadian soil. So the Nuremberg trial was fake. It didn't mean anything. It was a show trial, a kangaroo court. So basically, it was some of the worst experimentation you could think of with sleep deprivation, food deprivation, isolation chambers were invented during this. One of the things that Joe Rogan, oddly enough, promotes, which I find incredibly odd. Of course, everyone knows about the psychedelic use, the LSD, but this is only part of it. In fact, the big thing with MK Ultra was towards the end in the late 60s and early 70s was basically what DARPA is doing today with what's known as psychosurgery, which is the brain implants, which are all very real. Once again, highly documented. So what's very interesting about this is that we are expected to believe that the CIA lied to the American public for 20 years, spent anywhere between $20 to $40 million back then money, in taxpayer money, like I said, lied to us the whole time, and that it was unsuccessful, and that they just stopped working on everything.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, don't insult my intelligence, right? Like, I mean, I just, all you have to do is look at the documents and then look around. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to find out that, you know, people like Sirhan were programmed as a Manchurian candidate to kill RFK Jr. or RFK, his dad. So, I mean, like, he doesn't even remember what happened. And you start looking into these stories and you realize, oh, hypnosis is an actual thing. Oh, you actually can program somebody to become an assassin and not remember anything. In fact, for anyone who is curious about this, there is a magician, very famous magician from the UK. His name's Darren Brown, and he performed this very experiment. I believe it was, you just type in on YouTube, Darren Brown, just how it sounds, assassination. It'll pull up a 45-minute special that aired in the UK of him programming a young gentleman to perform a fake assassination, which he had no memory of at the end. And he fake assassinated Stephen Fry, who is a huge name over in the UK. He's also pretty big here, kind of an actor and stuff. But I don't think it takes much, really, when you start looking around to see that elements of MK Ultra not only continued, but are in use today. So here's the thing that I get flack in my research circles for this, but MK Ultra did end because MK Ultra was the research and development.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
what it is. They're done researching it. They
Yeah.
know it now.
Mm-hmm.
So the research and development's done, and they do continue research, typically under DARPA. I mean, just go on to the Daily Mail, which I understand is not the best outlet, but it doesn't take long to find information about directed energy weapons, giving people Havana syndrome, brain chip implants, mind reading capabilities. I mean, it's all over the place. And if anybody wants any of this information, I'll gladly walk everyone through it. I have no problem with that. In fact, that's what I do on my channel most of the time. Because it's so documented, it's easy for me to do this. But people don't have the time. Government documents are boring. I like reading them. Most people don't. So I try to disseminate the information and try to, lay it out. So, hopefully this helps a little bit. But, like, for instance, I think one of the best examples as of late, as far as the Manchurian candidate, is school shooters.
Yeah.
It's clearly a Manchurian candidate type program. Now, does that mean like the CIA is running it? We're not sure, right? These are the things we don't know. But this information is public. To be able to do this to somebody, you can learn hypnosis. You can get certified in it. You can learn something like NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which basically means like I can hypnotize people through speaking, basically. These are public speakers. So somebody like, trying to think of a good public speaker, Tony Robbins, he is a professional in NLP. So he basically hypnotizes people to a degree in order to make them more successful. You can be hypnotized and quit smoking or lose weight. These things are advertised, and it's real. Now, only about 40% of the population are suggestible enough to actually have it be successful. But 40% is a large chunk of people.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking millions of people, right? So, And as we can see, it takes one person, one time, one event to change the course of history.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this episode right here. Like I said, we're going to turn this into 2 separate episodes, the first being tonight, and the second we will follow up with next week. So be prepared. We go in even deeper to these concepts and ideas. It's a heavy conversation, and Jacob is just absolutely chock full of important information that needs to be being discussed. So I did want to add a Bible verse quickly to this conversation. Like I said, we weren't exactly prepared for cutting the episode in 2. So I'm just throwing this in quickly at the end to make sure we don't go a week where we miss one. So quickly here, we have 2 Timothy 3:13. But evil men and impostors will proceed from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived. So with that, please join us next week, Thursday at 6 p.m. with Jacob Johnson of Rise to Liberty podcast to continue this conversation and go even deeper into what is really going on at the heart of all of these issues that we're seeing today. We'll see you next week. Stay vigilant.
Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate the support and truly love getting to share this message with anyone who wants or needs it. The best way for you to support the show is to subscribe, add a rating, and share with everyone you know. You can find us on Instagram, X, and at thefourthbox.com. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.